Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. Have you ever experienced something that made you go, huh? Sometimes it's simple. You could have sworn you left your keys on the counter, but somehow they end up by the door. You must have just forgotten that you moved them. It happens. Now, imagine if that kept happening to you. Daily. After a while, you'd have the wherewithal to guarantee you'd place them on the counter. You know you did this because you've been so aware of your keys since the mystery started. Okay, so what do you do now? Continue on normally? Deny it's very happening? Or maybe you acknowledge the events, perhaps coexist with these happenings. There's so much mystery in the world, and I've got just a handful of those mysteries for tonight's episode. So, let's get started, shall we? So let's all be honest here. Everyone knows that the Rake is nothing more than a creepypasta. However, you cannot deny that people around the world are seeing and having legitimate experiences with this creature, or rather one that resembles the being in the stories, myself included. I've grown up with a relatively open mind in regards to strange phenomena and things that aren't generally accepted by mainstream science or society, but always approach things with appropriate skepticism, too. I have spent a very large majority of my life in the woods, hunting, fishing, and mountain climbing, miles deep in the backcountry. And so, within all of that time, I've observed many different animals, plants, and sometimes things I just simply cannot explain. I've gone camping and trekking solo many times in my life. It was liberating to just pack whatever you needed to survive and go miles deep into the backcountry where animals aren't even afraid of you simply because they aren't familiar with humans. It felt so special to be the only one immersed in that environment, but not anymore. Now, hidden behind all of the natural beauty is underlying anxiety, fear, and legitimate danger. An environment that once felt so comforting and therapeutic turned into one that drove me absolutely mad with questions and uncertainties, and is now one I will not enter alone, for I know what is possible and what is truly roaming around the forests of Northern America. It was 2016, in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania, that I saw a creature that forever changed my life and the way I perceive the world we live in. The first time I had ever heard of the creature, dubbed the Rake, was during a conversation with a friend who had lived in the area for years and had encountered this creature on multiple occasions in very close proximity to his house. I remember him asking me if I had ever seen anything strange in the large plot of woods across the street from his house, which at the time I had not. However, long before it was brought up, I always had a deep feeling in my chest about this plot of woods. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that it carried a very heavy, dark energy that was strong enough to encourage you to stay out. My friend took out their phone and showed me a picture of the Rake. It comes up with any Google search, a very generic picture. I laughed it off, and he warned me about the creature because I genuinely thought he was just growing marijuana or something in the woods, and he didn't want me to find it. I couldn't have been more wrong. Months had passed, with little more than strange noises at night, and the sound of some cats being carried off into the dark until the day that changed my life happened. It was midnight. A rainstorm had just dumped a bunch of rain. Me and a coworker at the time had just clocked out and were heading to the friend's house who had warned me originally about the creature. His house is on a long straight road with a dead end. Very few houses on one side, woods on the other. As we're heading down the road with high beams on, my coworker slams on the brakes and starts freaking out, saying that he had just saw the creature kneeling down on the shoulder of the road. Instantly, without thought, I jumped out of the car and immediately heard running and crashing through the woods in a parallel line to the road. Thankfully, due to the hard braking, the car shifted slightly so that the high beams were pointed into the woods, and that's when I saw it. That's when my life changed, my beliefs shattered, and my reality turned upside down. A 6-foot-tall, naked creature with grayish-white skin and long arms ran through the section of the woods, fully illuminated by the headlights, giving me at least 15 seconds of uninterrupted visual contact with the creature, firmly imprinting it into my head. It ran just like a human being, however, was incredibly fast and jumping over any obstacle in the way until it reached the point where the headlights no longer illuminated the woods. It then pretended to jump and run deeper into the woods. However, it actually turned and headed back to the road, where I lost sight of it in the dark part of the woods for about 30 seconds. As I was standing in the middle of the road, absolutely dumbfounded, with my jaw to the floor, trying to comprehend the severity of the situation, it then crawled out from the woods and crossed the road on all fours, about 60 yards away from me, and disappeared into the woods on the other side. I've been tormented by the creature since. It makes me confused, sad, curious. I can't get the image out of my head. I can't forget the feeling this creature gave me while I lived there, playing and toying with my head in waking life and in my dreams. I don't go into the backcountry alone anymore. I can't enjoy the solitude without anxiety ruining it. I can't be free. This creature exists, and so do others, that we just can't understand. And it's important that people realize this so they can enjoy nature while also being safe. I'm not sure how this post will be taken. I'm not really sure why I felt like now was the time to come out about my story. But it's eating me alive. It's given me crippling anxiety, and I have to do something to try to get this off my chest. Believe me or don't, that doesn't matter to me. I just want people to be safe, and I want my freedom back. And if coming out about this will help, then I'll do anything. The world truly isn't all that it seems. I had an encounter that I've never been able to explain. When I was 10, I was wandering through my backwoods on St. Patrick's Day. By that point, I was well aware that leprechauns were not real, so I wasn't looking for anything so much as just killing some time. No neighbors behind our house know anything, just woods. I knew the woods very well and was extremely comfortable spending days wandering around. At one point, I stopped walking for a bit and was just looking around when I hear some sticks break. I looked over, thinking I was about to see a deer, when all of a sudden, out walks a 7-foot-tall leprechaun with orange hair. No mask on or anything like that. Just a huge dude dressed as a leprechaun in the middle of the fucking woods with orange hair and a beard. He didn't see me, and I totally froze up. I watched him walk for maybe 10-15 seconds. The only thing I can remember thinking is, I can't do nothing. I was frozen, but somehow managed to yell out, "Hey, you." Dude stopped in his tracks and turned his head and looked at me and sort of grinned. Lost all courage at that point, turned around and ran faster than I ever have in my life. Have no clue if he gave chase or not, but in my mind it felt like he was right behind me, and I never slowed or looked back. This experience has drove me nuts ever since it happened because I just don't know how to explain it. Nobody knew where I was going, so it wouldn't have been a setup. I've asked my parents, and they both say that they didn't have anything to do with it, and they thought I just made it up as a kid. Thinking about it as an adult, my best guess is that I saw something that day, and my brain just wasn't able to process it, and my mind turned it into something that I could understand. And since it was St. Patrick's Day, I ended up seeing a leprechaun. I honestly have no idea though, and it stuck with me for years. I've never seen anything paranormal, or whatever you want to call it, since. Also, I've always hated the fact that in a world where people see ghosts, UFOs, and Bigfoot, I had to see the most ridiculous thing possible. Figured I'd throw it out and see if anybody else had any explanations or similar experiences. I was reading some old stuff I'd written about a possible ghostly encounter. I'm not sure if it fits, but it might. So back in late 2016, I was 19, and if I remember correctly, it was mid to late November. It was around 7 to 8-ish p.m., and I was walking into the kitchen to get a snack. I stopped, thinking I heard someone say my name, and I turned around and looked toward the living room and saw some stranger sitting on my living room sofa. This person was wearing a white anarkali dress, South Asian dress. I'll also add a picture that looks similar to what I'm remembering seeing. It was definitely a woman because of the dress, and the figure was sitting with one leg over the other, and their elbow was on the leg that was over the other. And I never did get a good look at the figure's face, though. I then looked away, and I'm not sure I remember why I did, and then I turned to look again, and nobody was there. Then a few days later, I was in my front yard, sweeping my walkway, and I crouched down to get something I dropped, and when I lifted my head up, I saw someone in front of me. It was a female's figure, and this figure was wearing some pretty kick-ass white high heels and a white anarkali dress, and I immediately recognized it as the dress I'd seen a few days prior. I then stood up, but no one was there. So what do you guys think? Was it possibly a ghost or merely hallucinations? I searched up a woman in white, but it comes back as a story of a woman who died of childbirth and other horrible deaths. I did my weak research for a bit after it happened, and then I gave up because 1, I was lazy, and 2, I couldn't get any answers that seemed to explain. Also, many articles discouraged the thought of seeing ghosts. Nor do I think it was an angel, because all the articles said angels are like a light source. I also didn't really think that it's a jinn either, because they typically bother people for fun and stuff. So I've heard and read, but this seemed super harmless. Anyways, all kinds of comments are welcome. So I've always had an attraction to the paranormal or anything supernatural, even as a young child. My babysitters made me watch A Nightmare on Elm Street when I was 5, and it just sort of went from there. I've never been easily frightened. In fact, I'd say I've been frightened twice in my life. Once was when I thought my house was being broken into. It wasn't. And the other happened when I moved to a house in Manchester at the age of 7. The house was big and creepy to look at, I guess, but my family never really thought so. My bedroom was tiny, and it was all the way at the back of the house. My parents put me there because I was a sleepwalker. Being at the back of the house, they'd hear me walking around before I got too far. The other thing about being there was it was dead silent at night, because it was so far away from everyone else's room. My room had this big, thick-framed window. They were old but very well made, and they also completely nullified outside noise. It was like being in a vacuum once my door closed. My first night in that room left me feeling uncomfortable. I always felt like I wasn't alone in the room whenever I was trying to go to sleep. It unsettled me, but I never mentioned it or complained to my family. I'd been living there for about a half a year, with the same feeling more or less every night, and then, one night I woke up, for absolutely no reason. This was unusual because I'm a deep sleeper, so it rarely happens to me, but I just felt like I shouldn't be asleep, like there was a voice telling me to wake up. Now. I sat up and my room was silent as usual and completely dark. It was always really dark on the floor space because my bunk bed and curtains completely drowned out light. When I sat up, I looked over the side of the top bunk. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel something. I lay back down and tried to clear the feeling I was being watched out of my mind. I turned my head to look out the window and drew the curtains back, and immediately I got the feeling I was being watched again, but closer, like someone had climbed half of the steps on my bed and stopped to look at me. I quickly glanced around, but again I couldn't see anything. Even with the moonlight and streetlights coming through my window, for the third time, I felt I was being watched and turned to the window again. An old man, probably in his 60s, was standing on our garage roof. I immediately shut my eyes. Our garage connected to our house through a little cooler room, and the roof of that room was below my window. I told myself I was imagining things, and I opened them again. He was still there, but closer now. I could see his face clearly. He had deep-set eyes that were brown, balding silver hair, and graying stubble. He had a hooked nose and thin lips. The most bizarre part were his teeth. They were perfect, straight and white, but the moonlight hit them, and it just made them look menacing. His attire looked old. It looked like a costume from Oliver Twist. He was dirty, covered in dry dirt or soot. I could only keep my eyes on him for a second or two before I closed them again. When I opened them, his face was pressed right up against my window. I fainted or fell back to sleep and didn't wake up again until the morning. When I woke up, I was on my bottom bunk. I never slept on the bottom bunk. I didn't even have a mattress or sheets on there. I didn't immediately remember the events of the night before and just assumed I'd been sleepwalking and stopped there. I went through my normal morning routine and got ready for school. My mom dropped me off and I went into a shop near my school to get some sweets before school. As I walked into the shop, all the events of the night before hit me. I remembered all of it, and it immediately shook me to my core. I was so frightened I told my teacher, who called my mom and picked me up and brought me home. My mom reassured me that it was just a dream. I knew it wasn't. It was weeks until I'd even step foot in my room again, even longer until I'd sleep in there. Eventually I did start to sleep in there again. I never saw the old man. I never even dreamed about him. I did have another experience about a year later. This has turned into a longer than planned story, so I won't continue, and I'll add more about the other one later. I don't know if you can classify this as paranormal, but it's definitely the weirdest thing that's happened to me. Luckily, it hasn't happened in a while, but it all started when I moved into my house 3 years ago. I'm a pretty neat and tidy person. I'm somebody who has labels, everything has its place, and I live alone. On top of that, I don't own a lot of things. And I know all of the things that I own. So when I started seeing a white rope just appearing out of nowhere, I got concerned. It was the morning after I moved in, and I was sipping coffee in the kitchen, looking out the window to the backyard. I saw in the middle of my perfectly mowed lawn a white rope, probably 3 feet long, half an inch thick, just sitting there. I remember picking it up and throwing it away. I had no use for it, and it wasn't mine. I assumed that maybe it had come off of the moving truck, something like that. But the next morning, I saw the white rope again, this time in the driveway. Maybe it fell out of the garbage, I told myself, putting it back in the garbage. Probably about a week later, I was cleaning the house, getting ready to have my first dinner party. I was taking the garbage out back, and just outside of the garbage that had already been picked up days before was the white rope. Again, I explained it away, throwing the rope in the garbage can, taking it out, putting it in a bag, and then putting it back in the garbage can. The next day, after my dinner party, I was cleaning up, and as I took everything out to the garbage, I saw the white rope. This time it was draped over a tree branch in my side yard. I took it and threw it away, and inside the garbage can, I saw the bag with the other white rope. And so I ripped that out. But there was no rope in it, just a bag. This went on for weeks, and it got to the point where I just stopped moving the rope, and I watched it move to different places every day, every other day, with no explanation. I eventually set up cameras, and that was because I found the rope in my house, just in a pantry, like a closet, perfectly rolled up. Same rope, same length, material, width, just inside now. I put it in a bag, I put it in the garage, and now I just, every once in a while, find it in a different spot in the house. A few months ago, I set up a camera just to film the bag and the rope itself. It was almost 2 nights of filming, and I didn't catch anything, and it hasn't moved since. So I don't know if I scared it, or it just doesn't want to communicate anymore. But there's definitely something going on with this white rope. Just have no clue what that is, and would love some help with that. So this has to be one of my fondest interactions between myself and other beings. I went into the meditation with the hopes of making contact with the same beings that I had previously made contact with. But I got something much more exciting. First, I began with my normal meditation techniques, using a custom-made crystal grid antenna array consisting of high vibrational crystals, such as rose quartz, moldavite, amethyst, merlinite, aura quartz, selenite, and lapis, along with others. Once I had that set up, I began to clear my mind, ground myself, and expand my consciousness so that I could become one with my surrounding energies and the universe itself. Once I felt ready, I pushed my consciousness far out into the universe so that I could meet with anyone who was willing to do the same. I showed whoever was listening visions of our solar system and our planets, which planet I was on, where my home was. I introduced myself and my family, and I began to show them who we were and what we were like. By this time in my meditation, I could feel myself bleeding out and becoming one with everything. I was everything, and everything was me. I could see every single vein in my body exploding with blue and white energy, flowing down into the earth and spreading out, touching everything and everyone. I could see and feel everything that was, is, and ever will be within this existence. All of a sudden, I was shown what looked like a galaxy of some sort, medium-sized, very white, sandy color, cloudy, with a bright center, and 2 smaller arms, like shark fin-shaped, spiral galaxy arms. I was then shown a star system with 4 inner planets, 1 large, possibly gaseous planet with a ring, and maybe 2 smaller outer planets that were all spinning around this star very fast. The main planet, which I believe to be theirs, was very Earth-sized, with a sandy brown color and patches of blue and green, Their atmosphere looked blue and purple, very thin. Next, I saw a family of beings wearing what looked like very thin, fine, blue-white silk robes. They had what looked like pale purple skin. They were very happy and loving. They had large, flat, angular faces, and they had what looked like normal-sized eyes, noses, mouths. Very human, yet very not. I was then shown what I now know to be memories of these beings. I saw these strange hills of blue and green, orange land. I saw a medium-sized planet or moon just over that hill with a small, very dim light, about 2/3 the brightness of our own, surrounded in a dense cloud of sandy white dust. I saw homes in the sides of the hills, and they looked like domed, honeycomb-like structures, very simple and made out of a strange, pasty white cement-like stone. I have no idea what material it actually was. That's just my best description. I saw the being standing in front of their home, almost like a family portrait. They were happy and all looking at me, like they were introducing themselves to me, or perhaps saying goodbye. I'm not sure. They smiled at each other, and then all smiled at me. The taller beings in the back, with their hands on the shoulders of what I assume was their children, in front of them. After it happened, and after I returned, I was left with a sense of awe and a longing to go back. This experience has been absolutely breathtaking, and I myself have trouble knowing it happened. I shared my life and location, and someone across the universe shared theirs. It was truly an amazing experience, and I can't imagine what else is out there for me to explore. Well, everyone, that's all the stories we have for this Friday night. But be sure to join me every Friday for more stories. Big thank you to everyone for sharing, and to everyone for listening. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, amandadarkesthour@gmail.com, or on our subreddit, thedarkesthouryt. Oh, and if you love The Darkest Hour and you never want it to end, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Stay spooky.